everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr, and because it is a Tuesday night college football playoff rankings reveal, also with Kevin Noon. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I will tell you in 4 to 73 minutes when Tom Izzo is done calling timeouts and fouling and delaying the college football playoff ranking show for no particular reason.
Kevin, why do we always get saddled with Tom Izzo? Why? Also, how's it going?
It's going okay. I was going to give you a comical answer on that, but I'll give you the real answer, and it's because Michigan State is in all of these pre-conference season challenges, and why can't he be in the late game? Why can't he be in the 9 o'clock game instead of the 7 o'clock game? And I don't know on that. I don't know why ESPN forces this in this window the way it is. It just makes no sense to me, but we're here, and with at least 127 and counting of our closest friends, and just a hit right here, not going to start on time, especially with Izzo coaching, and that is the post of the night. So good night.
Yeah, truer words have never been said. So welcome all of you in, and I'm sure the audience will grow as everybody turns from watching Tom Izzo to watching anything else. So we are here, and while, hey, it is Michigan week, so we will definitely talk some Michigan. Throw your questions in there. We'll get to them. Throw your super chats in there. We will definitely get to those. In fact, how about this? Construct your super chat around your predicted score of the Ohio State-Michigan game. So if you're feeling like a pretty hefty score for Ohio State, they're probably going to score, 60, 70 points, I would say. Wouldn't you guys agree? So go ahead and do something of that nature if you would care to.
Here's how this actually works. The person whose super chat is the biggest, their score is the one that will come true on Saturday.
That's true. It could be a long bowl season with a lot of travel. Dig deep. And actually, let's get a little thing in for the site right now while we got everybody coming in. Why aren't you a member at BuckeyeHuddle.com already? $4.99 for your first month. You're obviously going to get the Michigan game. If Ohio State wins the game, when Ohio State wins the game, you're going to get the conference championship game, National Signing Day. Oh, by the way, you're going to be right up there leading right into what would probably, if Ohio State loses, which to Oregon, then they would probably play a game before, but you would get that. And if not, you'd be right there, right up against that quarterfinal game for $4.99 for like a crummy delivery 2-liter. Tom talks about crummy delivery pizzas. I think you can't even get a 2-liter delivered for less than $5. So why not do it?
If you are getting 2 liters delivered, Kevin,
not by themselves, but I ordered pizza last night and I got a 2-liter delivered. Okay. Granted, it was Fanta orange because they were out of everything else. It was that or crab juice.
We can have the life choices conversation after the show ends. For right now, we can focus on the fact that not only will it get you all of the things that Kevin talked about, but also it will get you through Thanksgiving with your family, Christmas with your family. Think about all the political conversations you can avoid by going on the Huddle Board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com, member exclusive and entirely free of politics. You're welcome.
And I don't want to get off on the food tangent, but I did just see a tweet that Brent Venables took his daughters to Taco Bell after the Alabama game, and it cost them $94.
I saw that, and I was like, unless he has 17 daughters, there's no possible way that they actually spent
extra steak. Remember, what was it, two years ago about eating your feelings or whatever, and the $43 Taco Bell single order or whatever, and then we did it on a show where Tony put up from the app, his app order to get there, and he cheated by doing extra steak. And I got there. We've never seen it through. And since I'm sick of pickles, I think it's time for one of you guys to do the $43, or maybe the three of us could polish off $94 worth of Taco Bell with smart ordering.
With it's not smart ordering. It's just 1 a.m. ordering, getting back from a game wherever we were. That drive-through order probably wasn't very cheap.
That was
from
like
one of the games.
$43 or something. God, where were we?
Del Taco in Oregon.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
I'm
they're
like, I
cheaper than
remember the
Taco Bell.
hotel. I mean, and we had room beers, and I don't even think I cracked one open. I was so tired.
All right, football. Ohio State, Michigan. I tweeted they're over the 20.5 point favorite, and I tweeted this today that the last time Ohio State was favored by at least 20 points in this game, we all remember Michigan said, no, I don't, I'd rather not play the game, and didn't. This time they will almost assuredly play. And now this is, Tom, we talked about this in the morning show about this being the final opportunity for a lot of the guys. And from everything we've heard and from everything we've seen, the energy in the Woody is exactly where you'd want it. It's not tense, it's not puckered, it's excitement and the opportunity to get to do what you came back to do. And there's a lot of excitement right now in the Woody.
For sure. And I just dropped a bonus episode of the morning show. I mean, just like 20 minutes ago. And it is everything Ryan Day said about Michigan, which I'm sure the comments on there are going to be a wonderful, harmonious place. I thought about dubbing Kumbaya under it because I thought for sure everyone will love all of this all together, both sides of the rivalry.
Can't monetize it.
Oh, well, see, there you go. Good thing I didn't do it. That's the only reason. Thank you for validating my choices. But one of the questions that Ryan Day was asked was, what are you feeling right now? Are you anxious? Are you excited? What's going on? And he gave the correct answer, which is excited. But having been around him over the years, we at this point know what happy Ryan Day looks like, relaxed Ryan Day looks like, nervous Ryan Day looks like, worried Ryan Day looks like. We've kind of seen it all. We have kind of completed the Ryan Day mood board over the last 7 years or so. And he was very much fine. He was not like super happy jokey, in the way that you'll get him in, when we get him in April after spring ball, if things have gone kind of well, like he's nice and relaxed. There's no looming deadlines, any of that kind of stuff. That's one thing. For a big game week, this is 2 weeks in a row when Ryan Day has felt pretty relaxed to me, pretty comfortable with where things are. And that was obviously before Tuesday practice. Tuesday practice, maybe the biggest practice of the week for the team. Tuesday and Wednesday are the days when they get the most work done, and they work, they do the most physical, hard work on those days. So it would be great to talk to him after practice today or after practice tomorrow, but that's not going to happen. But going in, it sure felt like they thought they were in a pretty good place. Ryan Day seemed like he thought he was in a pretty good place. And really the players seemed like it was kind of business as usual.
Yeah, very much so. Not business as usual here, or maybe so. It's Steve, the comment. Michigan fans saying they could care less about the game Saturday because they got Bryce Underwood. I call BS. And it is interesting to where you have some Michigan fans are like, I don't even care about the game right now because we've already won in recruiting. It's very much like when you lose a commit and it's like, well, we dodged that bullet. Or, you try to make everything any negative you can into a positive. And Kevin, for the Michigan fans that don't care about this game this week, I don't think Ohio State cares at all about what some Michigan fans are worried about or not worried about. Michigan wants this game, and it's up to Ohio State to make sure they don't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Though I did see that Jermaine Matthews went out and found an old video clip from, was it Smaj Morgan? I think.
Yep.
Yes.
Just MFing Ohio State and calling them soft and female dog and other things like that. And I think Jermaine Matthews just retweeted with noted or something like that. So
could have gone with bet.
Hashtag bet. Yes. When University President Santa Ono gets on board with all of that. They're not concerned about Michigan getting Bryce, Underwood. They're not concerned about any of that. I'm sure that if you really got a truth dose out of some people around the program, maybe not directly in it, they'd be like, yeah, we'll see if that sticks when, the NOA really, comes out for real and everything else. But interesting that Larry Ellison, of all people, got involved in that whole situation to help drive him there. He went to University of Chicago, and like his graduate degrees, neither of them were at Michigan. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. But if your copium tank is running low, and you just need to sit there and focus on that because you know that a 30-point beatdown is coming, so be it.
Kevin, well, I've got you because you might be the best person to react to this.
Oh boy,
was that a score prediction? Did I hear a score prediction there?
I think I finally settled on my score. Maybe it's not 30, but it's gonna be a more than a couple scores.
Kevin, there's recently in the last couple of days, a Michigan football reporter talking about Ohio State and Michigan. And the quote is something to this effect. Ohio State did everything they could. They kept spending money and coming up short. Then Michigan came in and did it the right way. And they got their national championship. Thoughts?
I know who you're talking about. I responded, but go on.
I just, doing it, Michigan did it the right way. As they await, or seemingly they have gotten a delay of the notice from the committee on infractions, that maybe they've gotten a little bit of a time frame push on their the Stallions thing. So I just thought that was interesting that you see the Ohio State spending all of this money over the past 3 years to win a national title, and then of course Michigan comes in and does it the right way. It was interesting to me.
Our pledges. Only we can do that to our pledges. I mean, it's asinine. I mean, I watched it and I'm like, this has to be a deep fake. Like legitimately. I mean, it was such a stupid, tone deaf comment. Clip it. I don't care. Clip it. I don't care if he sees it. It was the dumbest comment that I've heard in a long time. And I work with Tony. So, I mean, it was, sorry, you just happened to be next to me.
I'm not on the teleconference yet. Okay.
I know. Well, I know.
Can I just tell you that wasn't even the Michigan podcaster thing this week that I thought, I wonder if that's a deep fake, because I don't think anyone would actually say that out loud. That was not even the thing that I thought that about this week. And it turns out that was legitimate too. So the hashtag takes are flying. It is Takesgiving, everyone. A very happy Takesgiving to you and yours. Stuff the turkey with the hot piping takes about, I don't know, LeBron and the Dallas Cowboys and, paying NIL to players.
There's an official review going on right now in the basketball game to slow it down more, just so you know.
Yes, 47.9 seconds left. Yes.
All right. That's moving along. And by the way, I do have somebody asked if I had the game going on behind me. It is being simulated right now at the end of the first quarter. Ohio State up 21-0. So
seems legit. I mean, Ohio State's a terrible first quarter team, though. So that I do have issue with that.
Geiger Lee says the bold prediction show is going to be interesting this week. Yeah. That's going to be another uncomfortable one in terms of what is actually bold and what is bold for the game. And we know that I will do what I always do, and I will be the boldest. And Tom will do what he does and tries to toe the line. It's not towing the line predictions; it's bold predictions. But look, we only have so much time. I only have so much time to argue with Tom. And then there are so many shows, and then there's just like real life arguing with Tom. And I think people think that we do this for entertainment, and some of it is, but some of it's just I just can't do it anymore. Like I got stuff to do. I can't be. It's everything is an argument, and so the bold predictions. Sometimes do I have to like let them off easy? Yes, of course. That's the only way that I can get anything done and move on with the next step in my day. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Sort of.
You guys don't let me play in your bold predictions pool, so hey, I had to create my own series, 3 shots, where my record is poor to quite poor right now. But there was the one time that you let me be the judge of bold predictions, and I said never again. Or as
Well,
Edgar Allan Poe said, nevermore.
two people is already one too many in a bold predictions thing. I'm just letting you know, like nobody wants to. I don't want to deal with another person. Tom doesn't want to deal with another person. Comment from Billy Tuesday. Didn't a Cleveland ESPN guy say Will Howard wasn't a real Buckeye? I heard something about that, but like
I
radio
saw the
people
clip.
I
don't pay
saw the
attention to
clip.
radio people. Like that.
Yeah, no, that's. I don't want to besmirch an entire industry of people,
But
You
he
know
said
him.
this is one of these sentences where nothing before the but matters at all. So, speaking of hot take merchants, like the problem is you can't be an expert on everything, but you have to talk about all sorts of stuff. Like you have to talk about hockey, and you have to talk about basketball, and you have to talk about college basketball, and you have to talk about college football, and you have to talk about NFL, and then you have to be able to be conversant about, baseball as well. And it's like you can't possibly follow all of these things closely enough to have good and accurate and well-sourced opinions on all of them. Like it's not possible to do that. There are not enough hours in the day. So then it just turns into sort of lazy, cliched kind of, we even listen to national college football radio in the car on the way to road games. And it's just kind of like, I don't follow any of these teams. Like I couldn't tell you very much about UCLA, but I can say all of the same words. Like I know all of the things that they're going to say, because it's just kind of the cliched sort of hacky kind of stuff. Like it is not possible to follow that many things that closely in order to have an informed opinion. And so then you say dumb stuff like Will Howard isn't a real Buckeye. And that's really stupid. And that's, if you have been around the program, and allow me to assure you, they have not, you would, if you have been around the program, you would know what you're talking about. You haven't. So therefore you don't. Like they are as qualified to talk about Ohio State football as I am to talk about the Browns. And I don't watch the Browns, so I'm not very qualified to talk about them. I have opinions on Deshaun Watson. My feeling is that he is bad. Beyond that, like, yeah, if I had to do 3 hours a day on the Browns, I'd sound like a moron. And guess what? When they talk about Ohio State, guess what they sound like?
Yeah, no,
I think we could do 3 hours a day. And I'm not saying that that would be radio and that would have to be our job. And you spend the rest of the time, reading and researching and everything else. But I think we could all just sit there and clock in at 8 a.m. and be able to put on 3 better hours than what some of these stations have on.
I will say I've never seen anybody from Cleveland radio at an Ohio State anything. Certainly not during the week. And you only see a couple of Columbus radio people at anything as well. So take that for what it's worth in terms of, just being around. And now they'll get all of the sound if they want to watch it. It's all available, but that's not, let me assure you, if people aren't showing up during midweek or 2 games or whatever, they're not really putting in all of the work on the midweek stuff and listening to everything and watching everything, because they don't need to, because their opinions are enough to get the ratings. And so as long as they have the opinions, they don't need necessarily the knowledge. I remember many, many years ago, Colin Cowherd ripping on Ohio State fans that were calling him because he said, like, I don't know the team as well as you guys. That makes me more qualified to talk about them, because like you're too lost in the Ohio State sphere. You can't see the forest for the trees type of thing. And I don't have as much knowledge about it, which makes me more qualified to give the true account of what is the situation there. And I think that's a pretty common idea from a lot of people. But also there are a lot of people that don't care whether or not they know anything, because they don't have to. They just, as long as they're talking a little, as long as people are listening, you don't have to know anything.
These 3 hours of dead air aren't going to fill themselves. I've got to say words.
And Jordan Kapler makes a great point here. And I just lost. If there's anyone I trust to talk nonsense, it's Tom. And really, like, what else are you going to get? Like, this guy is like, he's like Chef Gordon Ramsay if Gordon Ramsay was just doing nonsense and had a bad Australian accent.
Hey,
he's Scottish.
I am not going to listen to you besmirch my Australian accent. You can talk about a lot of things. You may not besmirch my Australian accent. We're not doing that. Not in front of all the wonderful people.
Idiot sandwich.
Tom's bad.
The basketball game now down to 13.5 seconds. Michigan State down by 8 points. Will Tom Izzo somehow foul 7 more times? Arguably, yes.
No, they're going to run it out. They're going to run it out. Memphis is going to win.
Okay.
They tried to foul.
Hallelujah.
All right.
They tried to foul. Well, they're still going to have to.
No, they don't have to. You're using the word have to. They don't have to do anything other than get it.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to run a term break, but I mean, I think we're still a couple minutes away from everything.
Great point by Geiger Lee. Go ahead and hit the thumbs up if you can. If you would like to, we would appreciate that.
I'll leave that comment up there. There was somebody talking about Connor Stallions being at the game dressed up as a cameraman. Let's remember that sideline cameramen have had impacts on this game before with hitting players in the knee. So, Ross Bjork and Ohio State better make sure that they know everybody's, who's on the field and who is not.
What a bizarre day that was. Of JT Barrett getting his knee taken out and Urban Meyer being completely beside himself after the game about, I'm going to track this down. I'm going to hire Magnum PI. I'm going to do whatever I can. We're going to find the killer. And
that investigation went exactly as well as the Central Michigan investigation into how that guy somehow got a sideline pass. And a year later, how did he do it? Well, I don't know. The coach has been fired, so now it's done. So it doesn't matter now. So we're just moving on. There must
Didn't
be
he retire instead?
Investigations. Oh, maybe he retired instead. I don't remember.
Got out of Dodge.
Something about going shark fishing. I don't remember.
Yes.
But anyway, he
PH.
There's something about sideline investigations in the Great Lakes State. Just doesn't ever seem to work out. The show is on. They have to run their 47-minute show open with a graphic of the bracket, and now Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers and Davis Nagbenosson.
Caleb Downs was just shown. Yeah, they had to do the cold open, and then somebody spent a lot of time putting this whole open together. We're not going to waste that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, though, if they're going to truncate the show a little bit you have, 35 minutes normally between games. There was supposed to be a full hour between the games. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they'll probably truncate the show a little.
And just to give everybody a heads up, I will not be leaving for the teleconference like I normally do on Tuesdays. I've seen the Q ratings. I've gotten the feedback. They're like, Tony, please don't go. So I'm going to stay here, and we'll just power through, and we'll talk about the rankings. We'll talk about Ohio State, Michigan. We'll talk about whatever you guys want. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I know I've gotten the letters. I've gotten
Sorry, that was just too tempting. You were getting too full of yourself.
Anyway, so we're watching now. They'll be launching the show in just a moment. They'll release the way they always do this every week is they release the top 25, and then we'll put those all in order on a graphic, and then we'll have a bracket with all the teams where they're all slotted in. Certainly the expectation for Ohio State this week would be that they will be number 2 in the rankings. Oh, good, a playoff explainer. I wonder if it's still 12 teams.
They may also tell us how overtime works.
It is 12 teams. Wow. How did I do that?
Yeah, the top 4 should be the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll figure out
how high is Missouri going to be ranked.
Well, they did win.
Yeah, they didn't lose, and they lost the week before, and they didn't drop. So if they won,
they stayed 23. 10. They love them some Missouri. Find a woman who loves you as much as this committee loves Missouri. All right, we're still watching the explainer at this point.
So I think one of the questions we want to know is, where is Indiana going to end up, and how far do they fall? Because they were at 5. Notre Dame's going to jump up. 7, Alabama lost, so they're going to drop. Ole Miss lost at 9. So there is a scenario where Notre Dame will move up to 5 where Indiana was. Miami will move up to 6, and then you've got Indiana, Georgia, Tennessee, like somewhere in there. So I think Indiana should still be in the top 9 or so.
Expert had them mocked at 9. Another expert had them mocked at 11. Here come the rankings. Colorado 25. Down 9.
Colorado, drops from 16.
And what's interesting about Colorado being that low, I think they are still technically in the running for the Big 12 championship, which if they end up as the Big 12 champion, Kansas State is 24. So you've got a bunch of these Big 12 teams right down at the bottom. If one of them ends up being the Big 12 champion, what's going to happen is the group of 5 champion, whether that's Tulane or Boise State, could very well be ahead of them. So the Big 12 champion could not get a bye, and the group of 5 champion that gets in, whether it's Boise State or Tulane or someone else, they could get the bye instead, which Boise State getting a bye or Tulane getting a bye in the college football playoff, and Ohio State and Penn State and Indiana or Oregon or Notre Dame all having to play first round games is crazy. Great news. Missouri up 2 spots. It is Tony. What's our rule about the bottom of the rankings?
That tells you what they want to do at the top. So Missouri being there, and there's Texas A&M at 20 as well, dropping 5 spots. So,
you know what Tom's explanation there sounded like? An explainer, like a playoff explainer. So,
so what happens if
Tom's is better?
If the Big 12 is not one of the 5 conference champions, if they're number 6,
yes,
in terms of then you've got the AAC and the Mountain West that are champions that are ranked ahead. The Big 12 could be left out.
That is absolutely possible. Yes. Now, Tulane. We'll see where they have Tulane. Iowa State 18. So Tulane is at least in the top 17.
Like you got all these Big 12 teams right here.
Tulane 17.
Yep.
Up 3.
Yeah, I mean,
Arizona State will be ahead of Tulane.
Yes, but Arizona State is. Yeah, I don't think Arizona State might be the only team from the Big 12 we haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
I think
they're 16.
They're 16. Yeah, so Arizona State 1 spot ahead of Tulane. Iowa State 1 spot behind Tulane. Can you imagine if the Big 12 gets left out of the playoff completely? Can you imagine what that's going to be like if that happens? I mean, first of all, if you get 2 group of 5 teams in the 12-team playoff, that would be just awesome. Like that would be so good for the sport in terms of building the interest in this and beyond just the Big Ten and the SEC and little pockets outside of those 2 conferences. In terms of the health of the sport, it would be great if you had some of those other teams in. I don't know if the committee is actually going to let them do that, though.
Yeah, that's it. Well, you've got those Big 12 teams all jumbled in there. So a win, whoever gets that Big 12 championship game win, it's going to be against a like opponent. Whereas Tulane's championship win will be against Army, perhaps in the AAC.
Yeah, that would probably be the AAC.
Army's already out, so these would be a better win for a Big 12 team. So they could throw that team over Tulane, especially if it's Arizona State, which I do think it will be.
Ole Miss in there 14, down 5 spots last week.
Alabama 13, down 6.
Oof.
Alabama is out.
Down 6. That's twice as many as the points they scored last weekend.
I don't know if while they're showing a little vignette about Alabama, if anybody had a chance to hear that caller legend on Paul Feinbaum lose his ever-loving mind. Go find it if you have not yet. Watch our show, please. But afterwards, go find it. It is 3 minutes of interesting, not a conversation, a monologue.
Yeah, I'd say it's performance art, but I think it's real.
I was hoping it was a work, but I don't think it was a work. Clemson is 12.
So Clemson 12. If they're following the AP poll, Boise State would be next at 11. If they're matching up with the AP poll. And they have followed the AP poll pretty closely over the last few weeks, outside of Missouri. Missouri has been like the one big exception where they've been several spots higher than the AP poll each week.
Why is that?
I think you should get on the call and ask a Missouri question.
No, I'm good. Thanks, though. Why is Georgia so low? Don't you know that they played a bunch of good teams, Paul? Sorry. I thought I was talking to Paul. I didn't realize this is a teleconference. So we still have SMU and Miami there in the ACC and Notre Dame.
11.
Okay, Boise 11. So that matches. So the AP top 25 would be Indiana 10, SMU 9, Miami 8, Tennessee 7, Georgia 6, Notre Dame 5, Penn State 4, Texas 3, Ohio State 2, Oregon 1. I mean, if Indiana falls to 10, I think that's not bad for them because you're going to pick up a win next week, and either Miami or SMU is going to pick up a loss. So you're probably going to, that's one of the teams that's going to be ahead of you if you're 10. So if they're 10, I think they're probably going to get in one way or the other, but they probably are playing a road game.
I think Miami or SMU would have an argument to be in with a loss. Miami would
Indiana
be maybe more
10.
than SMU based on some of their wins and Indiana's lack of wins. But I don't think it's a great sign that they already have Indiana 10. I think that's kind of it's a deep drop.
Number 9, SMU. Can I ask why the college football folks are flying all these people to Grapevine, Texas every week if they're just spitting out the exact same thing as the AP poll?
What are we paying for? I mean,
you could just copy and paste. I literally put this bracket together with the AP top 25 because I'm like, well, it's going to be pretty close. And I should have if you look at the thumbnail,
just run with it.
If you look at the thumbnail on YouTube, that's what this is. It's the AP top 25 just thrown in there. And then I figured, well, I'll just adjust it slightly, but I might not need to adjust anything.
Do you think maybe they're not going to Grapevine and these are all
Tennessee 8
static image?
Is that still chalk for you?
No, Miami was 8, Tennessee was 7 in the AP poll. So there you go.
They just justified their existence.
Disrespecting the Vols.
So if
someone's volunteering to get yelled at by people online.
If Miami loses a close one to SMU in the ACC championship game,
I
mean, watch out, Indiana.
Georgia
7. Interesting. So Miami is way up. Miami's up a couple spots. What did Miami do last weekend? Am I forgetting some great win that Miami had?
Miami, they beat Wake Forest 42-14, man.
Oh, so
he said great win. I mean, it's going to be interesting when Miami goes up to
Syracuse
because that's going to the ACC.
Yeah, Tennessee jumps 3 spots. They did not beat Bootzilla says they beat an FCS school. They beat a very low-level FBS school. They beat UTEP. So put some darn respect on the Miners' name. Miami at 6. So the 5 teams left at the top of the poll are Notre Dame, in some order, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon. Miami Hurricanes, strength of schedule 59th.
Yep. And that's
remember when that was something that was disqualifying, having a bad strength of schedule?
Now I think Indiana is now like 62 or 65 after playing Ohio State.
And Indiana has annihilated
like 25
teams they've played. Miami has skated by against a couple of them. Miami has barely escaped.
So again, I think this is not great news for Indiana. Yeah. I am interested to see if they can somehow sneak Alabama in there somewhere. South Carolina with a win over Clemson this week. Does that jump them? Does that give them we'll just replace the two?
Yeah, well, Clemson and South Carolina. Clemson's 12, 2 spots behind Indiana. South Carolina is 5 spots behind Indiana, but they're going to play. One of them's going to have a ranked win this weekend. So you wonder how many spots that moves them up. You're right. I think you're right on that. Notre Dame 5, Penn State 4. So the 3 schools left:
Texas
Oregon,
3,
Ohio State, and Texas. Yeah. Texas 3. Okay, Ohio State 2, Oregon 1. All right.
And everything that I'm being told is that Georgia does not want to play in the SEC championship game if they don't have to.
Well, they do. They do have to because mathematically they're already in. So
okay, so they are now in. Okay,
unless they can fake a COVID outbreak, I'm not sure how they're getting out of that one.
What are the chances of that?
Can't fake it. I mean, you can just. Everybody uses the same Wizinator. I don't know. I'm not looking to see if anybody's laughing. I was just laughing at myself.
I'm not. Yeah, no.
So the Texas A&M thing. So if Texas loses, then what does that do with the SEC? Does that put Texas A&M in then? So the winner goes?
I think it's the winner goes.
The winner of Texas A&M goes to play Georgia, is my understanding.
Oh,
yes.
Man.
Now, what's going to really hose people, where you get a bid stealer, is if Texas A&M beats Texas and then beats Georgia. Because if you look at Texas's resume, it's terrible. Like Texas's resume is no better than Indiana's, but Texas has just been number 3 just because they've been number 3 and they haven't lost. So the committee hasn't actually readjusted anything. If you ask them to justify why is Texas number 3, like where is Texas's quality win, the answer is and they got blasted at home by Georgia. That's their really one big game that they've played this year, and they got blasted. So, Texas's best win is like what? Michigan? I mean,
maybe
Vandy, Oklahoma, at Arkansas. Heck, the way Florida's playing now, maybe Florida.
Maybe Florida. Looking at the bracket
right
now,
Tony, that sounds like a lot of teams are going to be playing in bowl games on December 27th is what that sounds like to me.
Looking at the bracket right now, holy rematch. Tennessee, Georgia. I mean, well, not necessarily, but Indiana and Penn State didn't play each other, but just the way those come up, you went from having some exciting games. Oh, the SEC is coming north to when I have an SEC game, you have a Big Ten game on there.
And it'll continue to adjust. Teams will ends up moving around a little bit more, and I'll punch that bracket up in just a second.
Jesse is like, we don't want IU PSU. I mean, I'd be interested to see it, but I don't think it's worthy of being a playoff game.
Well, it finally get to see Indiana against another Big Ten team, I guess. But yeah,
this is where the committee says they're not going to adjust a team a line one way or another to avoid a rematch or a conference versus conference game. Just move Indiana one direction, or swap Indiana and SMU, and it's a much more interesting game. Swap Penn State and Notre Dame, it's a much more interesting game. Swap Georgia and Notre Dame, and those are 2 more interesting games. So you don't get 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams. It's just, you can slide those teams around, and how will they justify it? Sir, tell me that you have never been on one of those calls without telling me you've never been on one of those calls. Like it's just, how will they justify it? They will say words that they will feel no obligation to hold themselves to the next time they're making a decision, is the answer.
I'm looking at this bracket. For one, I don't know what they're saying on TV, but I can guess only 3 SEC teams, and you've got 2 of them in this bracket, like playing each other and knocking each other out, and one of them knocking each other out to only have then 2 SEC teams. So there's going to be some consternation about the 3 SEC teams, but we've kind of been looking at the possibility of that happening because Alabama keeps losing, Ole Miss keeps losing. I mean, if you have other 2-loss teams in there and you're just a bunch of 3-loss teams, this is kind of what happens. And I know that now you kind of understand why Greg Sankey was like, we should have 4 automatic bids for the SEC, for the Big Ten, because the way it's looking, that you can see a scenario where they don't get it unless, by God, that's South Carolina's music, and they come blasting in here and steal a bid. But Texas, if they lose to Texas A&M, I think they should be out. Because what have they done? And they've got 2 losses.
Yes, they should be. But what is the committee going to drop them 8 spots for losing to another ranked team? Like at this point, we talk about this all the time. Like they don't feel obligated to hold themselves to any kind of a consistent standard in terms of what makes a team ranked highly. Why is Texas ranked 3rd? Well, because that's because the number next to them says 3. That's why. But why is Texas ranked there? What specifically about Texas's body of work makes them the 3rd best team in the country? Well, listen, they've played a very difficult SEC schedule, such as, but also, and who could forget? St. Louis CB says, I was understanding the top 12 ranked team would make the playoffs. I guess that is not the case. No, the case is that the top 4 conference champions. It does not have to be the 4 power conference. The top 4 conference champions in terms of the rankings get first round buys, and then the 5th highest ranked conference champion gets one of the seeds from 5 to 12, depending on where they fall in the rankings. So in this case, this week, it's Arizona State is ranked 16th, but they get a spot in, they get the number 12 spot because they're the highest ranked Big 12 team. Sorry, I really have to think about that. Yes, Texas has quality losses. Yes, that's the best thing you can say about Texas as well. The team that they got whooped by at home is not bad. I mean, they're the 8th seed. So listen.
SEC chat has tuned in. Yes, quality loss for Texas. Good job. But if they don't get a quality win here, then where is the proof that they can do it? And I agree with you, Tom, because you look at Indiana, and we could say the same thing about them. They just lost to Ohio State. They dropped 5 spots. So
Okay,
if Texas loses and drops 5 spots, they're still hosting a game pretty much, maybe.
Yeah, and I think there are people saying, why is Texas number 2? No, that's not the question. We understand why they're the 2 seed. We understand that they are right now at the top of the standings. We don't understand why they're ranked 3rd. It's the number on the left-hand side. Why are they ranked 3rd?
Yes.
Specifically, what do they have that puts them ahead of, everyone else is being judged on. Indiana just got dropped because they have no quality wins. And they have a loss to a top 5 team because they got whooped. Well, that's Texas. Texas has no quality wins, and they have a loss to a not quite top 5 team where they got whooped. Like the Texas and Indiana cases are actually shockingly close. Both of them, maybe their best win is against Michigan. And Texas's win over Michigan is slightly better than Indiana's win. Congratulations. That's 7 spots on the polls is what that's worth, apparently.
Well, it's just a good thing they're not measuring teams based on their wins over Nebraska, because then Indiana would be ranked ahead of Ohio State. Super chat from Mike Farino, off topic. Am I wrong for thinking the game either ends in a close 7 to 10 point win for Ohio State or a 30+ point win? 1, it's never off topic. 2, I don't think you're wrong for thinking anything about this game, because we've all seen all of the different scenarios. If you grew up in I'd say if you grew up if you remember the 90s, or if you remember the last 3 years, you should never think that a Michigan win is impossible. So therefore, a close Ohio State win is certainly in the realm of possibility. I also think, a 30-point win, that's a lot, just because it's hard to do that as much anymore, especially against a team that is going to slow things down. I don't think 34-10 or 38-10 is out of the realm of possibility at all. I'm not saying it's likely, but I can see that happening.
You could see that happening.
I was moderating the chat.
You could see that happening. I mean, it's possible. It just how well can Michigan run the ball against Ohio State? Can they run the ball well enough to keep the Ohio State offense off the field? If they can, they could make it a close game, because the defense is pretty good. If Michigan can run the ball well enough against Ohio State and hit something in the passing game at some point of some consequence, and the defensive line can get pressure on Will Howard and bottle up the Ohio State run game, sure, they can absolutely keep it close. They could even win the game. If they can't do one of those things, it's going to be a 10-point, 14-point Ohio State win. If they can't do either of those things, Ryan Day is going to be putting someone on a poster. So it just kind of depends on what you think, how you think those particular elements of this game are going to shake out. Because is a 7 to 10 point Ohio State win possible? Absolutely. Is a 30-point Ohio State win possible? Absolutely. Is a Michigan win possible? Absolutely. These are all, Michigan's not winning this game by 30 points. I feel reasonably confident in saying that.
Michigan's not scoring 30 points.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, unless they can hold Ohio State to -17, I don't think Michigan's going to win the game by 30 points.
Hey, Michigan just scored 50 against Northwestern, and I'll remind you, they also scored 30 in their season opener. So that's twice this year they have scored 30 points or more in an entire game. So apology accepted.
We'll throw in a little sidebar here from Steve, who's watching us on Twitter X. Any news on a Sanders flip? No news at this point. Just kind of wait and see what's happening with December 4th rapidly approaching for National Signing Day. if David Sanders happens to be at Ohio State this upcoming weekend for the Michigan game, that sure would be telling at that point. But I've seen some erroneous reports out there that something is coming immediately, and something could happen. But Sanders has played this so close to the vest and everything else during this process. I don't expect him to allow himself to be scooped by anybody else. He's gonna make the announcement in his own time.
Is he definitely December 4th, early signing day?
I think so. I think that there's a chance that we could maybe see a couple more guys go to the late signing period, but I think that when the early signing period came in, they thought that was only going to be 30-40% of the signing class, and then year one it was like 96% of the signing class. So yeah. I don't think that there's necessarily going to be many guys dragging it on. I mean, I think that if Sanders comes to the decision that he doesn't want to go to Tennessee, it's going to be Ohio State. If Sanders decides he's going to stay with Tennessee, then he's going to stay with Tennessee. I don't think he needs or wants a month plus of more BS leading into the late signing period.
I thought it was interesting when Ryan Day was asked today about the early signing period being next week and moved up 3 weeks, and what he thought about it. He said he was in favor for moving it up as early as possible. Basically, he's like, I wanted it to move it up. He's talking about, like, I think summer. And then there was pushback from high school coaches who said, if you do that, we will have players opt out of high school. And I thought, yeah, you would have a bunch of seniors saying, well, I'm going to go get ready to be a freshman, because we already know they're graduating early. Now they would just skip their senior year of high school, which is crazy. And not all of them, but certainly a bunch. And the best players would, and the high school coaches want to keep their best players. So I understand why they were against that. But having all of this at this time, this early signing period, at this period of time, it only affects really the halves. So it's hard for their vote to outnumber everybody else in all of FBS. And I think there's a lot of, deal with it from most of the coaches and most of the programs, because it's like, yeah, first world problems. I'm sorry, deal with it. And they're happy to have it this way. And the sooner they can get kids signed, the sooner that the bigger schools will have to lay off of their commitments.
Yeah, that's kind of how a lot of that stuff is. It's just kind of like, well, welcome to the show. Sorry. Like it is what it is. Like that feels like that's the answer to a lot of stuff right now in a lot of different areas of the game. Speaking of which, P-Flaw says, Wildhead without the SEC chaos last weekend, Indiana would have been out at 11-1. That is rough. I mean, because you think Indiana lost, and I think we were talking on the sideline right at the end of that game about, when TreVeyon Henderson went down, it was like, oh boy, TreVeyon Henderson may have just saved Indiana's season, and then Ohio State punched it in anyway. But I feel like the committee was kind of looking for a reason to push Indiana out. And, Greg Sankey may be dumb, but he's not stupid. Like all the nonsense last week about strength of schedule and have you seen the, and, all that stuff, like it feels like that does probably get to some of the committee members to a certain point. Because I think it would be very hard to intellectually justify, Indiana went on the road. Like I said earlier, you look at Indiana's resume next to Texas's resume, it's not that different. It is not eight spots or 7 spots different. That is not the gap between those two resumes. But Texas has the fancy brand name, and Texas' daddy's rich, and woohoo! And that's why Texas is 3. And even if Texas loses to Texas A&M this weekend, doesn't matter. They're gonna be in the field. I mean, how much does Texas have to lose by this weekend to fall from 3 to out of the field? I cannot come up with a scenario, any combination of results for Indiana and Texas this week where Indiana finishes ahead of Texas, even though they're very, very similar resumes at this point.
Don't sleep on the bucket game in Indiana, Purdue. I mean, come on. I mean, that's going to lower their strength of schedule at least 20 spots.
How far did Texas or Georgia drop after? I'm just looking at this. So Texas loses by 15 at home to Georgia, and Indiana loses by what they did on the road to Ohio State. Doesn't seem to matter at all to the committee. It's just they certainly Indiana. Here's what I think happened, guys. So we all remember Kurt Signetti in his introduction speech on the court. He's firing up the crowd, and I believe the exact quote was, "Never taking a backseat to anybody. Purdue sucks. So does Ohio State and Michigan, and so does the College Football Playoff Committee." I think he never should have said those words, and if he hadn't, maybe then there wouldn't be this revenge tour that everybody's taking against him, because you shouldn't be saying the committee sucks. You shouldn't be saying that in front of a crowd. You shouldn't be saying that. You should say it in private. We do it all the time, but don't do it on a basketball court in front of 15,000 people.
Sorry, I'm still moderating over here.
Oh, sorry, I was giving Kevin space to talk. Never mind.
I just run through the stop sign. I just talk when I want to.
All right, so I want to get to this one from Rusty Jesse. If Texas beats A&M but loses to Georgia, could Miami end up the number 2 if they win out? Anyway, for the SEC champ, ends up number 4. So, I think the answer to that is really probably no. Georgia is 1 spot behind Miami right now. So if Texas beats A&M but loses to Georgia, Georgia would have I guess the way that happens is if Georgia loses to Georgia Tech this weekend, which is possible. That's I don't remember if that game's in Atlanta or Athens, but that was a game that was close last year in year 1 for Brent Key. So it feels like they could, if Georgia overlooks that game, Georgia could absolutely lose that game.
Athens.
If it's in Athens, okay. If Georgia loses to Georgia Tech this weekend and then Georgia beats Texas next week, then you could see potentially that and if Miami wins, then it would be almost impossible to justify. Miami plays whoever they play this weekend.
Syracuse.
Oh yes. So, oh man.
Kyle McCord.
Can I tell you? The Georgia loses to Georgia Tech and Miami loses to Syracuse. Like, I don't know what that parlay pays, but I'm like, in my head, that has already happened. Holy smokes. But let's just say Miami beats Syracuse, Miami beats SMU, and so then they are ACC champion. Then absolutely they could be, especially if Georgia loses to Georgia Tech. If Georgia beats Georgia Tech and beats Texas, Georgia's going to be the number 2. It would have to be, and if Texas A&M beats Texas and then loses, and then beats Georgia, how much are they going to move up? I mean, could Texas A&M with those 2 wins jump Miami? That it feels like that those are the 2 pathways to potentially having that SEC champion be the 3 seed. If Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, or if Texas A&M wins out and the committee doesn't fluff them up to number 2.
You remember back in the summer where there was the formula put out by the AP, by former AP writer and now the Athletic writer, about predicting who's going to be in the playoffs, and you had to grab somebody from outside of the rankings, the initial rankings. And I'm looking right now because I don't believe Arizona State was not in the initial college football playoff rankings. And right now they are, boom, there they are, 12th overall, 12th in the bracket there by way of winning the Big 12. So that is interesting. And they're on a pretty good run right now. And I think they are the betting favorite to win that conference. But so is Georgia or Colorado still only has 2 losses in conference? Their 3rd loss came from Nebraska. These tiebreakers are just all over the place. Like this is the last week, and it's like, well, there's 4 possibilities. I think I saw something. There's like 7 or 9 different tiebreaker possibilities in the Big 12 right now, and we know what the SEC is with all of those teams. But I'm here for it, man. Every game has meant something and has adjusted something else. Like the dominoes that are falling every single week or being created every single week has made this fascinating.
Yeah, there is. I'm going to pull this up right now. I'll put this on. I've got to throw a graphic together real quick.
I'll drop
there
the
is a
chat off so there's a clear slate, and then we'll bring it
well,
back.
you guys, it's going to be a minute to talk before we get to it. But
Okay.
there is a flow chart that lays out. Here's the Big 12 tiebreaker scenarios, and it's just insane. We are 1 week from the Big 12 championship game, and it is nuts. I saw it and I was like, I have never loved any online content as much as I love this exact thing. It is crazy. We'll put that graphic together and throw that up in a minute just to share that with you guys. It is.
We could do the super chat while you do that, Tom.
We can do
go ahead and
you
do that.
But I'll say I looked up the bet for Georgia Tech and Syracuse. Money line bets on Bet365. $10 pays $2.15. $5 of it is a parlay boost. So I guess if you didn't get the parlay boost, it would be $10 to pay $2.10. So
I'm not going to do it.
Strongly about it, you could sit there and get yourself something nice. You can get yourself something nice with that,
or go get you 2 hot and readies.
There you go. Pack of
that sounds win-win.
There's no
Mike
losing.
Reno, super chat. I feel like the only path to Indiana missing the playoffs, even with them at 10, is A&M beating Texas and Georgia. So A&M beating Texas and Georgia, but even then, Georgia might be out. Now, I mean, Georgia obviously is. Oh boy, that's something.
We'll get to a minute. I will translate for everyone in a minute.
In a second. I mean, Georgia has its losses. Georgia has an unreliable quarterback. There are a lot of forces at work trying to keep Georgia firmly in the playoff field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Georgia getting into the SEC championship game has given those people some ammunition. So I don't know what it's going to take to get Georgia out of there short of losing to Georgia Tech and then losing in the championship game. Now to Mike's comment about Indiana, I think Indiana is still kind of on some dangerous ground right now because there's still a good amount of uncertainty and there are just not enough SEC teams in the field. And I don't really even say that tongue in cheek. I just think, again, that there are forces that own the contract, the broadcast contract to the college football playoff, and also on the SEC contract. And they say that TV doesn't matter in that conference room. And I say bullpucky to that.
Yeah, Bama getting a win over Auburn this should move the needle for them. But it's hard to imagine only 3 teams in the playoffs from the SEC after what we've seen. But I still think Clemson beating South Carolina, and you're going to probably see them jump Indiana.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of different ways that Indiana gets screwed, and the world is not so beautiful a place that Indiana won't win out over, Indiana will win out over a Alabama or a Clemson or another like big brand name team. And, this is an audience largely of Ohio State fans, which this has worked in your favor at times in the past, but it does feel like, boy, it would be super fun to have Indiana in the college football playoff, but the committee seems like they are you can sort of see the committee winding up to screw them. And so I think, we'll see how that goes.
The big hope is that they would just replace one of Miami or SMU, basically.
Yes. Well, and you're hoping for one of those teams to really just thump the other one. Yeah. That's, if Miami does to SMU what they did to Texas in the 1990 Cotton Bowl, like, sure, that's what you're rooting for, including the 189 miles of penalty yards and Mike Francesa on the call. You're rooting for all of those things all at the same time.
Now I have to expand the screen to see what this entire mess is.
Okay,
so while Tom is getting that set up, Pudge says, "Oh, shut up, Indiana is in," and Billy Tuesday says, "Indiana better not run up the score on Purdue. That's so classless."
I mean, I don't know how you can be confident that Indiana is in if Indiana is literally the last team in right now, and their game this upcoming week is against one of the worst teams in FBS, and then they're not going to play the next week. So you have teams with a chance to add as many as 2 different positive data points, and Indiana is going to have a win that everyone kind of just looks at and hand waves. If you were extremely confident in that, I'm not saying they can't get in. I'm just saying
it's not 100%.
Yeah, no,
it's not 100%.
All right, so this flowchart, this is the Big 12 tiebreakers, and this is from fbflowchart.com, fbflowchart on Twitter, at fbflowchart. I saw this and I was like, I need to follow this account, and they have only done stuff, like they only put stuff out like very rarely. Like the last thing before this was some like NFL playoff tiebreakers a year ago. So it is not an account that tweets frequently, but the way this works is you look at the top and it's the Colorado-Oklahoma State game. And so then who wins that game? If Oklahoma State wins, you go to the left. If Colorado wins, you go to the right. You have to assume Colorado is a far, far better team. Oklahoma State has not won a Big 12 game all year. I don't know if many people know that, but if Colorado wins, then you go down to the next one. Okay, Colorado has won. Baylor or Kansas, which of those teams wins? And then you go take whichever side wins that one, and then you go West Virginia, Texas Tech, who wins that one? And the Arizona State one actually doesn't really matter, but because it's that's a non. I think that that is a conference game. So yeah, so you go down to that one, and then you go down. There's certain times that TCU and Cincinnati matter, and Kansas State, Iowa State. Overall, I think I counted 6 different teams that could potentially be in the Big 12 championship game, and there's 1 week left in the season. Kansas State, West Virginia, BYU, Arizona State, Iowa State. There's a Texas Tech in there in like this one weird scenario. I didn't say Baylor. That's 7 teams that could be
Kansas
in there.
State too. Did you say Kansas?
Yeah, I said Kansas State already.
West Virginia. Yeah.
I was going to say they're like, what was it? It was like 6 teams with 1 set of losses, and then 3 more with an additional loss. Because I was watching college football final, and they were saying that there were like 9 teams that were somewhat in play, but really about 6 of them that had actual paths, even though some paths are easier to maneuver than others.
So, I mean, just playing this out, you figure Colorado wins. I'm probably putting my money on Kansas at this point until they lose to a team. They've beaten 3 ranked teams in a row. They are the first unranked team to have 3 straight games where they beat a ranked team in the history of college football, as far as the stat I was told worked out. So you get Kansas. Then I'm going Texas Tech, and then I'm going Arizona State, and then I'm going Iowa State, and then I'm going BYU. And so that gets us to a Colorado-Arizona State Big 12 championship game. I'm sure, go ahead and parlay the money line on all of those, because that's absolute easy money. It's just insane that you could have any of those, any of those combinations. And if you do get something other than an Arizona State, I'll punch back up the college football playoff rankings here, because look at Arizona State is 16th, Iowa State's 18th, BYU 19th. You've got teams, Colorado, Kansas State. If those teams win a couple games, and those are both teams that could get in there, they're still 7-8 spots behind Tulane. Yeah. It is entirely possible that with a certain set of certain set of results, the Big 12 champion could finish behind the AAC champion, and you could have 2 Group of 5 champions in the college football playoff, and the Big 12 missing it out entirely, this has been a really fun, really crazy season. I think you would have, what are the odds you would have gotten on a Power 5 conference misses out on a 12-team college football playoff entirely because 2 different Group of 5 champions make it into the bracket in round 1. I feel like that would have been about 50-1 before the season.
And Tulane, go ahead. Tulane plays.
Is that more of an accomplishment of the Group of 5 teams, or an absolute abject failure by the Big 12?
Yep.
Yeah. Tulane plays Memphis on Thursday. That is their final game of the regular season. Memphis is a 9-win team. Like that would be that's a quality good win for them. And man,
do you see Tony? Do you see Memphis or Army, which would be their potential AAC championship game. Do you see
Sure
Memphis or Army at the bottom of the rankings?
And you're not going to after they lose another game. So
Tony, what's our
that's
rule about the bottom of the rankings?
tells you what they want to do at the top, towards the top. And if there is no Memphis there, and I don't know that Memphis has been in there at all. Now I will say Tulane also one of the teams that was not in the rankings initially. So, but yeah, it's not a great sign for them. And them winning 63-0 doesn't necessarily make the AAC look better by any means. It's kind of like Ohio State winning by as much as they did against Indiana makes both Indiana look bad and the win look less impressive because it was easier than it should be against the top 5 team. So that means Indiana was not a top 5 team. And you see now they're 10th. What is the way that the SEC gets a 4th team in? Is it Texas A&M winning this weekend? Because is Alabama?
Yeah, because
what's Alabama's path?
I think Tennessee and Georgia, I mean, being at 8 and 9 are far enough north of the cut line that they should be okay. I think that you add somebody there, and I think it comes at, much to Pudge 4510's chagrin, I think it comes at Indiana's expense. I mean, just kind of where it would be.
Tennessee's at Vanderbilt this weekend, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, Tennessee is at Vanderbilt, which will be, I mean, man, it would be great for the Doors if they could win that one.
Well, Vandy's won it here recently. I mean, Tennessee's not that far from the Ash Bin.
So if you're looking at how does the SEC get a 4th team in, South Carolina beats Clemson. That probably gets them, that probably vaults them over Indiana would be my guess. If Alabama beats, Alabama's only 2 spots out. If Alabama beats Auburn, could you see them sort of wiggle them up a little bit? Sure. Ole Miss is going to beat Mississippi State. I think Ole Miss is probably basically out at this point unless there's real chaos because they're not going to pick up a quality win. But South Carolina beating Clemson, like
South
any
Carolina,
of those.
South Carolina can't go over Indiana. They've got 3 losses.
You say that.
Heart of a champion.
No, I mean, that is true.
Yeah.
That's my bad. They do have a heart of a champion.
It's, sir, you may have forgotten about a little thing the committee likes to call the heart of the champion. Yeah, it's tell me that they can't do it. Right now they're 5 spots behind Indiana and they have a chance to pick up another ranked win. I mean, tell me it's impossible for them to jump that. I don't think it's impossible for them to jump that. Now, if you want the SEC to really have a guaranteed 3 wins, Texas beats Texas A&M this weekend. At that point, Texas is in. At that point, Georgia's in. At that point, if Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt, there's a possibility that Tennessee could fall out. But if Tennessee falls out, you're probably replacing with another SEC team at that point. So I think 3 is probably the floor for the SEC. But if Texas beats Texas A&M, if Auburn beats Alabama, and if Clemson beats South Carolina, and those are all possible. I'm not feeling great about Hugh Freeze and Auburn in the Iron Bowl, but it's possible. A&M. Yeah, I mean, if Texas and Auburn and Clemson win this weekend, you're probably looking at a 3-bid SEC. I don't know that I'm expecting all 3 of those things to happen. And if all 3 of those things don't happen, if only 2 of those things happen, you're probably getting a 4th SEC team in. But it's theoretically possible. And man, people will have kittens if the SEC only gets 3 teams in this year and the Big Ten gets 4.
Just wait. What about this scenario? And we'll get to Rusty Jesse here in a sec. So say Texas wins. And Georgia we know is in. Tennessee loses to Vandy. Alabama loses to Auburn. Clemson beats South Carolina. Now you're looking at 2 SEC teams in the playoffs. There's
Tony, the world is not a beautiful enough place for what that would think about how angry that will make some of the worst people on the college football internet. Like it's just not a beautiful enough place. Now, let me throw out the fact that Georgia could lose to Georgia Tech this weekend, Tony. I mean, if we're really if we want to get nuts, let's get nuts here.
Let's get crazy.
Let's get crazy. Texas, you figure Texas is in. So, okay, so we're going to let Texas just win out. But Texas beats Texas A&M. They're out. Georgia loses to Georgia Tech and then also loses to Texas in the SEC championship. They have to be out. They can't possibly keep them, only slide them a couple spots there. So Georgia's out. Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt. Say they lose to Vanderbilt by 14 points. Okay, maybe they're out. Alabama loses the Iron Bowl. I mean, at this point, Ole Miss is in unless Ole Miss loses the Egg Bowl. And I mean, Tony, what are the odds something stupid happens in the Egg Bowl?
Now, 2007 taught me anything. It's chaos can never happen in the final week.
Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If this sort of sequence of events even starts to happen, you are going to see a red dot on the chest of any SEC official who's calling any kind of penalty against any kind of ranked SEC team in any kind of game. Like that Greg Sankey is not going to play at that point. Like that's going to be, oh boy.
Under the replay hood is just going to be a shot of Greg Sankey looking like the all-powerful Oz, telling them
it'd be a shot of the officials' families held at gunpoint in their homes, in their basements. We're kidding. Just to be clear, we're kidding. They
don't have basements.
Yeah, that's true. They don't have basements in the South. See, there you go. See, that's how you know we're kidding. But no, I mean, there are ways that this goes from. We've gone from 4 SEC teams in to 3 right now, and you see that 3 of the top 4 out are all SEC teams. But there are ways that this does potentially have lead to 3 SEC teams getting in and not getting a 4th one in, and theoretically you could get to, I think, 2. I think outside of another weekend of absolutely wild sequential upsets, I don't think you're getting to 1. I think that's probably not possibly going to happen.
I think 4 is only maybe a little bit more likely than 2 based on the way things look right now, because I think Alabama needs help and they may not get it. And South Carolina, that's a tough ask as well, even though they're playing better, but they do have 3 losses, and I don't know which 3 lost. Is there going to be a 3-loss team in here? I remember writing before the season, or when this thing was announced, that there would eventually be 3-loss teams in the playoffs. So that's something we're all going to have to make friends with. And with as crazy as this season has been, we might get it right out of the bat, not have to wait until the 14-team playoff.
In 2014, in the 14 playoff, the number 4 seed, Ohio State wins the national championship. So, whenever you kick off a new leg, crazy, some wild stuff can happen. We will get to that USC question in a second. I just want to point out again, in 2007, there was a game in the Big East. I think it was Pitt, West Virginia, or something like that, and the officials did everything they could to steer the game in the beneficial direction of the Big East, and they just couldn't accept the gift. I mean, so we can all joke and say, well, there's just no way that that the conference or the officials will let that happen. And I'm not here to besmirch the integrity of anybody wearing the stripes. I know it's a tough job and all, but there is precedent. There is precedent out there.
I was at that game. That is the only time I have ever been at a game.
I've never heard this story.
Oh, I've told this on the pod. Thanks for listening to the podcast, Kevin. I've told this story many times.
To my podcast.
He just said it an hour ago, like 30 minutes ago. He told the story.
I'm just pulling this up right now.
I'm sure I was moderating and getting after the Bible guy or whatever his name was.
Yeah. Pitt was, I didn't tell it on this show. Pitt had 7 penalties for 55 yards. West Virginia 2 for 20. I mean, that's basically what happened in the Ohio State-Indiana game last week. That was not, I didn't remember that being particularly egregious. I was there. That's the only game I've ever seen in Morgantown, which is like saying, basically, if you know the history of West Virginia football, that's basically like saying, well, I was only in Hiroshima once. And it's like, that was the day when, like, I'm driving and I was going with a West Virginia grad driving in to go cover the game. And on the radio, Kirk Herbstreit is talking about I think it was Kirk Herbstreit talking about Les Miles taking the Michigan job, because that was after Lloyd Carr was retiring. And so we're hearing that. And then we go, and, of course, why would Rich Rodriguez take the Michigan job? Rich Rodriguez is about to go to the national championship game. All he has to do is beat a crappy 4-win Dave Wannstedt Pitt team. What could possibly go wrong? And then Pat White hurts his thumb. And it was, as someone who went to Ohio State in the 1990s and was in the stadium for a bunch of big rivalry games where the huge, enormous favorite is like not winning by as much as they should be, and everyone's starting to look around and go, I was like, oh, I know this feeling. Oh boy. Oh, I think I know what's happening before anyone else in the stadium does.
I've seen this movie.
Yeah, I was down on the field for that game. That is one of the most memorable college football games I've ever been to. And it was just, we went to it because it was like, well, West Virginia will handle their business and head on to the national championship, and it'll be a good game. And it was just like, oh boy, this is not how this was supposed to go at all. And I covered the Pitt post-game celebration, the Pitt post-game press conference, and Dave Wannstedt was a happy fella in that post-game press conference. And boy, that was a real loud stadium for a while until it wasn't. And then, oh boy, did it get quiet at the end. Holy
Was it Tyler
smokes.
Palko?
I think that was prior to Tyler Palko, but let me pull up the stats.
Might
That
be
was
right.
Pat Bostic.
Oh, wow.
Geez. Former, did he start out at Penn State? I can't remember.
He played 3 years.
Yeah.
He played 3 years of college football, 7, 8, and 10. And by far his biggest year was 2007, which would have been his freshman year. 1,500 yards passing that year. Ooh. 8 touchdowns, 13 picks.
Wow, sounds about right. That's Dave Wannstedt quarterback. Being a Bears fan, that's about exactly right. Even the 1,500 yards part.
LaShawn McCoy, 38 carries, 148 yards. That was it. It was just like they just rode him and rode him and rode him. It was 13-9 and it was 13-7 the whole game. It was 7-3 Pitt at West Virginia at halftime, and then Pitt scored a touchdown in the third quarter. It was really eerily similar to the 1996 Ohio State Michigan game. Pitt tacked on a field goal in the fourth to make it 13-7, and then took an intentional safety on the last play of the game to get to 13-9. Yeah, that was one. I feel like I talk about that like every 2-3 years on one of these shows, because it'll come up and it's like, oh man, do I have a story for this?
I started watching some of those games at the OSU ice rink. I was covering something, men's hockey, I believe. And I remember watching it, the end of the game from home, just cussing at the TV, because obviously there was impact on Ohio State's chances of going to the BCS championship game. And I was like, these officials are so corrupt, and they just could not get them across the finish line. I mean, they were just like, we're with you. We're with you, Mountaineers. And they just were like, no, we're good. We're good.
That was the same night as the 2007 Big 12 championship, where Missouri, I think Missouri and West Virginia
Kansas
were number 1 and number 2. No, they beat Kansas the week before, because the Big 12 championship game was Oklahoma, Mizzou, and Ohio State needed either Missouri to lose or West Virginia to lose, because Missouri was 1, West Virginia was 2, and I think Ohio State was 3. So they needed one of those two to lose, and it was the same thing. Missouri was out to a lead early, and then Oklahoma turned it on and ended up winning a runaway 38-17. And it was like you started Ohio State had lost in the first weekend of November, something like that, to Illinois at home. Yeah. It was like, well, the season's over. Yeah. And then you went into the conference championship week, and Ohio State's sitting at home because the Big Ten didn't have a conference championship at that point. And it's like, well, you need either Missouri or West Virginia to lose. What are the odds that either one of those will happen? And then they both happen, and Ohio State goes into the BCS championship game as the top-ranked team a month after losing to Illinois at home.
Right, and if both of those wouldn't have happened, they wouldn't have drawn LSU. They would have drawn the other team, which probably would have been a more favorable matchup in New Orleans.
Probably. But you think? I watched that Missouri Big 12 championship game. I think at a Roosters somewhere in Columbus. I don't know if I watched the earlier one as well, or if we were just camped there basically watching all of this unfold. good times. I see Jason Manley posting about Juice Williams. Not so great times for Ohio State fans on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. I bet Juice Williams is going to run the ball here, and boom, he did. That's crazy that is now like 17 years ago. And I guess when Ohio State position coaches are now, they played in that game and now they're coaching, I guess that tells you how long ago it was. James Laurinaitis and guys like that. Man, that was a tough one for Ohio State, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I want to hit this real quick. Ordinary Angler says you showed Georgia playing Tennessee, but teams 5 through 8 get home games. So that's a function of the top 4 conference champions get the top 4 seeds. So it doesn't matter that Boise State is ranked 11th or that Miami is ranked 6th. They get one of those top 4 seeds. So then Ohio State, which is the 2 seed, gets slid down to number 5. Penn State, which is the 4 seed, gets slid down to number 6. Notre Dame, which is is ranked 5, gets slid down to number 7, and so on. So even though Georgia and Tennessee are top 8 ranked, they are not top 8 seeds because they are not conference champions. And we're sort of presuming things right now. If Georgia wins the conference championship, guess what? They will get a first round bye. If they don't, they won't.
I want to get back to an earlier question. I'm not even going to try and find it. We promised we were going to get to it about what happens if USC beats Notre Dame. Notre Dame sitting at, Notre Dame is 5 in the rankings, 7 in the seeding now. To drop off of the bracket. I don't know exactly how many points USC would have to score, but it might have to be 3 digits. I'm not sure on there.
I don't know that that's true.
I mean, they're to drop them from 5. I mean, I guess the average drop for people at this point has been 4 to 5 spots. So if you were to move them, let's just say you move them down to 9, where SMU is, that would be, that could theoretically, based on all this, be the 10 or whatever. They're still on the right side of the cut line. I mean, I know everything is dependent upon. This game can't operate in a vacuum. All these other games are going to affect things, but I think that Notre Dame is relatively safe despite not having a conference championship game, just based on them being 5. I think that if they were 6, if they were 7, I would feel that they were in trouble. If they were at 6, I would feel that it would be iffy. But I think at 5, they're safe.
I don't think I agree with that, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm just looking through their schedule right now. I think their only ranked win at the moment is
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. So if Texas A&M loses to Texas and Texas A&M falls out of the rankings, which is entirely possible if they get thumped, then Notre Dame has 0 ranked wins, and they have a loss to Northern Illinois, and they have a loss to USC, neither of whom are any good at all.
7 and 5.
Yeah, I mean those are teams that are not even close to being in the top 25.
Well,
so you got 2 bad losses, and you don't have a good win. How many teams did we have a down arrow 5 next to tonight? A bunch. Well, you moved Notre Dame down arrow 5. They're now number 10. And, does Clemson jump them? Good, sure. If they beat South Carolina, Clemson's moving up. So you might lose. I wonder if the committee will have them sort of, there's no way they can slide below Indiana. Like, that's a possibility that they might sort of have that in the back of their minds for TV rating purposes or whatever. But I don't think they could feel great about them, especially if Texas A&M loses.
Do the triumvirate of Miami, SMU, and Clemson, and obviously only 2 of those 3 teams. We know SMU is in the ACC championship game, and then Miami's in if it wins, and if not, Clemson is in. Is there a cannibalization? Are we really going to be in a world where we're going to have 2 ACC teams in there? Or are they going to sit there and say, you had your opportunity, all right, right, whoever loses, if Miami loses to Syracuse, Miami's done. If not, then you've got the 3 of them sitting there. I know that I have a natural bias against the ACC. There was nothing worse than flipping around on the channels, and the only game that was on Jefferson Pilot, and it was like NC State UVA. And I'm like, I don't know if I'd like football this much to watch this game. I loathe the ACC. I can't stand the conference. So I recognize my bias there, but I can't put 2 teams in this field from the ACC.
I think the committee could now, and I think one of the other things that the committee believes is that SMU's lone loss to BYU came with a quarterback that is not their starting quarterback now. I think that's in the back of their mind. So if you have SMU beat Miami, like the question is, can Miami drop out for losing to SMU? Because I think Notre Dame is in danger. And something else to keep in mind about USC, they have 5 losses this year by a combined total of 19 points. So like they've been in every single game. So I also think the committee might respect USC, which Notre Dame better hope they do.
Not a heart of a champion.
If the committee is like, yeah, losing to USC, a lot of teams have almost lost to USC, so they might cut them some slack. But I would not recommend Notre Dame losing, because that brings in the Northern Illinois loss again. Like you've moved past it, but don't remind people by losing to a 7-5 USC team.
Well, they've moved past it because they've really looked pretty impressive the last few weeks, and they've, I think Marcus Freeman has over the years figured out how to defend the triple option, and so he's picked up really, really decisive wins over Army and Navy, which is probably doing a lot of the lifting on their resume right now. But yeah, you're one loss away from opening that conversation right back up, and that would not be a good thing for Notre Dame. Moving real quickly to something we talked about. We spent a lot of time talking about this on a previous show. The idea of southern teams going north and having to play in cold weather. Geiger Lee says the idea of a cold game in Ohio Stadium against Arizona State sounds heavenly. We always talk about Miami going north, and boy, they never look good going north. Arizona State, I have not looked up Arizona State playing like at Washington State in November or something like that. I'm going to guess that series history is not tremendous for the Sun Devils. I will pull that up right now.
What about Miami at Pitt? How late do they go there? I think that is, I tweeted or I told somebody, like, the number of Ohio State fans right now that are concerned about the cold against Michigan and how it's going to be 25 degrees. And it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? Are the same people that are always like, let's see Alabama come to Ohio Stadium in December. And it's like, you don't even want to be there. You're worried about your team being there, but you want to see Georgia come in. I think, you should want your team to play in ideal conditions. If you're not one that likes the cold, but
the Big Ten championship game should be at Soldier Field, outdoors.
I'll take it at Wrigley. No.
I
like it at Lucas Oil. That's just me. And it's a lot of other people too.
So in 2022, in November, I don't know what the weather was these days, but Arizona State went up to Washington State in November in Pullman and lost 28-18. In 2015, Arizona State went up to Pullman, Washington in November 7th and lost 38-24. In 2011, they went up to Pullman, Washington on November 12th and lost 37-27. Now, they did win on Halloween in 2013 in Pullman, 55-21. But yeah, 1-3 their last 3, trips up to Pullman, which is probably the closest thing you're going to get to Midwestern weather in the Pac-12. And that's early to mid-October. That's early to mid-November. That's not late December.
I got the weather report from the 22 game at Pullman. Temperature 38 degrees.
There it is.
Wind 3 miles an hour out the northwest. Weather sunny.
What was it 2012?
Was that
22?
That was 22 because I was able to get to it on the site that goes back to like 14. So
yeah. Did you have one from 2012, Tom, as well, or no?
Well, I had there was a 2012 that was 2011. 2011 they were in Pullman on November 12th, 2011.
I'm looking. I have a book. 32. All right, this one's better. 32 wind, 10 to 15 miles an hour. Weather, rain, snow mix.
Yeah, see, that's some real Palouse stuff right there. Like that's exactly what you're looking for. Yeah. So that's the closest corollary you're probably going to get there, unless Arizona State has played in a pinstripe bowl that I'm not remembering.
Post from Geiger Lee, ASU. Don't worry, it's a dry snow.
That is
Well, there are
Tremendous,
different types of
tremendous
snow,
content.
if we're honest. I mean, with the heavy stuff and the
Mhm.
light, fluffy stuff. But
What do you guys
I
think
don't.
of my
Go ahead.
idea that I posted? I tweeted this out a
It's a
day or
bad
two.
one.
No. Listen to it. We're not far away from having indoor snow games where you just have the snow machine, put it on the field, however much snow you want. It's 60 degrees, it's 55 degrees in the stands, it's colder on the field. You can bring in monster trucks, you can bring in dirt. Let's bring in some snow. You tell me Jerry wouldn't do that? I mean, at some point this is going to happen. You can have
Stones are big.
either. You can cool the fields. You've got all the heating and the cooling there underneath. I think that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, they have ski areas in like Dubai, right? So
Right.
yeah, I think you could. Yeah, you could make that happen. Yeah,
You can sit
I
there and bring
can.
snow into your kid's birthday party. I don't know how long it's going to last, but they have services that do that.
Yeah, I'm for it. You should be able to change the weather just like you change, on like the college football video game, like you can
Yep.
change the weather there, right? So yeah,
So that's a little too
why
Truman
not?
Show for me.
The
Why
Minnesota
not?
Twins used to do it all the time.
That's true. Here's one from Sean. Says pretty much whatever happens at the Big Ten championship, they will play again in 2 weeks.
Kind of.
Maybe because that's if Ohio State wins, Ohio State's going to be 1 and Oregon's going to be 5,
Yeah.
and absolutely that's what's going to happen. If Oregon wins, it's possible Ohio State slides a line or two. I think it's going to be hard for. I guess if Ohio State loses by a few touchdowns and Georgia narrowly beats Texas, Texas probably gets the 5 seed. Ohio State slides to the 6 line. I don't think Penn State's going to jump Ohio State because you got the head-to-head there. Notre Dame theoretically could jump Ohio State, but Ohio State's got a substantially better resume than Notre Dame and doesn't have the bad loss that Notre Dame does. So, yeah, I think it's very likely that that's going to be the case, that you're going to see Ohio State, Oregon playing, assuming Ohio State wins this weekend, you see them play a second time in Indianapolis and a third time in what would be the Cotton Bowl, because according to this, they know the semifinal locations are determined by the number 1 seed and which bowl game is closer to them. So it's either the Cotton Bowl or the Orange Bowl. So Oregon, as the number 1 seed, would go to the Cotton Bowl. So no matter what, even if Oregon loses, doesn't matter. The top half of that bracket would be slotted in to the Cotton Bowl. The bottom half of the bracket would be slotted into the Fiesta Bowl, to the Orange Bowl. If Texas ends up number 1 and Ohio State's number 2, then Texas would go to the Cotton Bowl, and then the top half of the bracket would be, then the Ohio State half of the bracket would go to the Orange Bowl. So that's how the semifinal sites are slotted in. The quarterfinal sites, we've talked about this, but I feel like every show we have people asking questions that we've answered in previous weeks. But we understand sometimes you have things to do other than listen to us talk about the college football playoff. We get it, believe me.
How dare you?
The quarterfinals are slotted in based on the existing bowl contracts this year and next year, 2 more years on the existing bowl contracts for the playoff. So wherever the Big Ten champion is slotted in, whether the number 1 seed, number 2 seed, number 3 seed, or number 4 seed, they are going to go to the Rose Bowl. So that whatever that line that Big Ten champion's on, that is the Rose Bowl. Wherever the SEC champion is, whether it's Georgia or Texas A&M, that game is going to be the Sugar Bowl. So in this case, number 1 Oregon playing in the Rose Bowl, number 2 Texas playing in the Sugar Bowl. The ACC champion, they're going to the Peach Bowl. So that would be, in this case, number 3 Miami, but that's true whether it's SMU or Miami or someone else. And then the number 4 team, whether that's the Big 12 champion or the Mountain West champion or the AAC champion, wherever that is, that would be the Fiesta Bowl. That's the bowl game that gets played on New Year's Eve. The Fiesta Bowl, so that would be number 4 Boise State versus presumably number 5 Ohio State. That would be in the Fiesta Bowl on New Year's Eve based on the current alignment. And then the ACC champion Miami playing in the Peach Bowl. That's noon on New Year's Day against the Penn State Indiana winner. The classic late afternoon Rose Bowl time, that would be Oregon against Georgia Tennessee winner. At the Rose Bowl, that's at 4:30 Eastern or something like that. And then the Sugar Bowl is like 8:30 Eastern, and that would be Texas against the Notre Dame SMU winner based on the current bracket.
It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, we got 2 more of these shows to do, so I almost hesitate to ask this question because we'll probably answer it again in each of the following shows. But let's say Ohio State beats Michigan, and we will know that data point going into the next one. And the bracket is set up to where you're gonna play Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and then there is the very real path that you're going to play them in the national semifinals. With Oregon already holding the first win, is it more likely that Oregon, which is a more likely scenario based on, or you've got this win, like if Ohio State wins the Big Ten championship game, does it hold an edge having just beat Oregon 2 weeks prior in the semifinal? Is it a case of where they're going to ping pong the wins, Oregon, Ohio State, Oregon? How do you see advantages or disadvantages being set up with playing those two games in close proximity with a game going back to whatever it was, week 7 of the season?
I think by this time of year, every game is its own thing, and there's going to be so much familiarity that I don't know that it's an advantage for either team, but whoever wins it is going to certainly have a proof of concept and some confidence there. So I think that would be key. But also, say Ohio State loses, is it how difficult is it to beat a team 3 times in the same year? It's never been done. So I'm guessing it's not easy, but the idea that imagine whoever you are trying to beat Ohio State 3 times in a year. It's like, yeah, it's one game at a time, but that would be one of the biggest feathers and the biggest caps you've ever seen in college football if Oregon is able to do that. And boy, you will never hear the end of that. And maybe don't let it happen. But yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know that there's an advantage either way. I don't know, Tom. What do you think? Because to me, it doesn't feel like if this, then this. I feel like it's self-contained and it's the same kind of game each time. And the game previous didn't matter because there's so much talent on both teams that any play here or there, any slide early or slide late can be the difference.
Right. You look at the first game and you could go through, I mean, Dan Lanning basically did go through and say, well, if they call the fumble correctly on the opening drive, then maybe you're up by 2 scores. And yeah, sure, that's true. And then if they don't call the offensive pass interference that I heard, I don't remember who it was. There was it was like a national show or something, and they basically said like, yeah, that was a terrible call. And so it was not like an Ohio State person saying that, but you don't make that call. Ohio State's kicking a chip shot field goal to win the game there. So and maybe even punching in a touchdown at the end. So either way, like that game is a coin flip game. That was a coin flip game on the road. It should be. I think I saw a projected line that Ohio State would be like a little between a field goal and touchdown favorite over Oregon on a neutral field in Indianapolis. We'll see what that line is when if both teams handle their business this weekend. But I have thought from the beginning that the funniest possible way for something to play out would be for a team to win in the regular season, win again in the conference championship game, and then lose in the college football playoff to the team they've already beaten twice. Like, you want to talk about a scenario that would drive you insane. That is it. Like, it's not 3 times, but I go back to the 1996 season where Florida State handled Florida at the end of the regular season. And the very next game they play, well, they had to play a rematch in the Sugar Bowl, and Florida beat them 52-20. And you go back to the 2011 9-6, the 2011 9-6 LSU Alabama game, and LSU wins, and it's like, well, they won the last time. What could go wrong this time? And then Alabama wins 21-0 in the national championship game. Georgia and Alabama had last year. Georgia beat Alabama in the regular season and lost in the SEC championship game, if I'm remembering right. I mean, there's a bunch of these things where it is hard to beat the same team twice. It would be really hard, you would assume, to beat the same team 3 times.
Something I will say about Oregon, though, too, let's remember Tez Johnson has not played since November 2nd, have not heard a real official status update on him. So, I mean, if you're Oregon and he's close but questionable, do you sit him for the Big Ten championship game when it's the difference between the 1 and the 5? And we have talked about on multiple occasions that the 5 ain't a bad draw if you can get it. So There's a lot that could happen there. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Ohio State still has a game to play on Saturday, despite what the Vegas line says. But let's not put the cart before the horse quite yet.
It is an interesting question though about Oregon and not playing Tez Johnson. He did post on like Instagram that he's going to be back, but I don't know. He's not a doctor, but I believe they do stay at Holiday Inn Express. But every single week we've seen it's like the 5 seed looks like a better road than the 1 seed. And you look at this one again, and I would say the 5, even with the extra game.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to play the extra game just in terms of the wear and tear and the injury risk, and there's an advantage to being able to sort of game plan for multiple weeks and you probably know. Hey, you can sort of game plan for those 2 teams, but you have a month to do it, and you're not trying to do, you're not trying to sort of divide your attention. Even so, I mean, the 5 seed is not a bad spot to be. I think if you ask any college football coach, they are going to tell you they don't want to play that first week because you're running the risk of losing. Crazy. This is college football. Crazy stuff happens. I'm hard-pressed to envision a team from Tempe, Arizona coming up to Columbus, Ohio in December and beating a team in cold weather with a substantially better, personnel and, probably better coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. I would be hard-pressed to see that, but who knows? Someone slips and sprains an ankle or something like that. And then, Arizona State and Boise State, Ohio State's probably a 3-touchdown favorite against both of those teams. But you run the risk of injury. You run the risk of just, something stupid happening. Like it's college football. Sometimes something stupid happens. That's what we love about the sport.
I will say, if you guys are watching now, you want to hit the thumbs up before you, if you have not yet, we would appreciate that. It's real easy. Just boom, hit the thumbs up. And of course, you guys can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. As we said at the start of the show, good time to become a member. $4.99 for your first month. See what it's all about. We invite you to do so. We have any?
We said to Woody today that we're not going to go long unless we have really good numbers. Well, we've got an hour 41 and we've had really good numbers. So thank you to everybody for watching us. We enjoy the conversation. Sometimes this is one of the shows that's really difficult for us to get a lot of comments in because there's just a lot that has to be said. And I don't want to cover up Tony's beautiful face with comments.
I will say, I have had the game going on. It's been off for a while now. But Ohio State did win 35-17 this time. So,
all right, there you go. And, Geiger Lee says, are we really looking past a Michigan game? No one's looking past a Michigan game. I mean, this is a conversation. We do these shows on Tuesdays because we do these shows on Tuesdays. And so because of the nature of the college football playoff selection show that we do, you're sort of naturally looking past the game. But no, No. If you have subscribed to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle, you have seen plenty of content today about the Ohio State-Michigan game. We generally will go a little overboard with that. If you're a BuckeyeHuddle.com member, you have already seen both of the Ross Fulton X's and O's scheme analysis pieces for this weekend, both the offense and defense. The offense piece is live on YouTube right now. Great stuff, as always, from Ross on that. But make sure you are subscribed to your YouTube channel and hit that bell and all the good stuff. And just go to youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle and scroll through the videos because we have put out a ton of content this week. I put together a video of everything Sharon Moore said about Ohio State. And I think it was 25 different questions about Ohio State. So it's a ton of stuff. Did a thing tonight about everything Ryan Day said about Michigan today. So that's out as well. There's lots of stuff we did. We had all the interviews from today with the Ohio State players. That's all up. It is all there, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And of course, you could also check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, what happens there?
That's where we cover the team. That's where the recruiting coverage happens. That's where all of the X's and O stuff. And behind the paywall, we're there on the message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, talking all kinds of different stuff we're hearing, stuff we're seeing, things like that. People we're talking to, all kinds of info back there as well. So please check it out. And say hello to us there when you get there.
And tomorrow, member exclusive Tale of the Tape comes out. My way too long breakdown of the upcoming game. This one is the game, and I think about 3,500 words. I'm not sure. Going through all of the position battles, names, trends, everything you need to know. Member exclusive. So $4.99 Buckeye Huddle. Check us out. I've already seen a couple of familiar names from our usual shows show up on the member rolls. So people are taking advantage of the deal. Why aren't you? Get on board. Join us at Buckeye Huddle.
There you go. Yeah, a bunch of, I mean, to get all of the stuff that we want to do this week and try to get as much done before Thursday as possible. We cram a lot into it, but we know you guys want it, and so well, you got all kinds of podcasts for your trips to the family on Thanksgiving, and the driving that you might be doing. We'll have plenty of stuff for you. We've got listener questions about the Michigan game coming up. Buckeye Weekly podcast that'll drop sometime around this one. I mean, honestly, that's the problem, is finding the hours and making sure that you get everything in your feed. So refresh daily, hourly, and who knows, something might pop up. So let's knock out these starred questions if we haven't done.
We have a few, and a lot of these happened a while ago, so we'll see what's on here. Odysseus, will Day use the blueprint laid out by Texas?
Texas is one of the teams that was able to run and throw on Michigan a little bit, and that was with Will Johnson in there. I think Ohio State will do what they feel will work best for them, and that's a silly statement, but in terms of running outside and throwing downfield, and we've seen them try to use the screen game in terms of helping the running game, and that wasn't necessarily successful against Indiana. So it'd be interesting to see if they borrow from Texas, but really Ohio State has to do what they're good at, and that's some of the misdirection running game, I think, Tom, and then just you don't have to take some deep shots. It doesn't have to be all deep shots. I'd like to see some deep shots from this kind of offense that Ohio State has, but I'd also like to see more of the intermediate stuff and maybe less of the short stuff that they try to make work in the first drive of the game that rarely works. When you have the ability to stretch the field, why wait?
Yeah, I think why wait is a good question there, because Ohio State has, in that mid-range passing game, been so effective. I talked to Ross Fulton about that a little bit this week. I think I talked to him about that last week as well. But just you don't throw it behind the line of scrimmage. You don't need to throw it 40 yards downfield. Just get Emeka Ibuka 10 yards down the field. Get Jeremiah Smith 10 yards down the field. Get Carnell Tate 10, 15 yards down the field. Just get it to them in space. They are very hard to bring down when they're out in sort of, in the open field. That is not an easy thing to do. And you figure a lot of this game is going to come down to how well can Michigan's defensive front control the Ohio State run game? Because if Michigan has to dedicate more than 4 guys to stopping the Ohio State run game, I think they're going to be in trouble. And, you're going to have linebackers in the run fit and all that. I get that. But if the 4 down Michigan defensive linemen can control the Ohio State run game, that's where you get into the, oh boy, all the West Virginia Pitt things from 2007 I was talking about earlier, the oh boy, this isn't good kind of vibe. That's where it comes. I think Michigan is, the interior of the defensive line for Michigan is so good. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, those guys are fantastic. When you get to the outside guys, Josiah Stewart's really more of a pass rusher. He's a speed rusher. He's great off the edge, but he's not necessarily quite as good in the run game as like a Jack Sawyer or a JT Tuimoloau. He might be better as a pure pass rusher, but he's not necessarily as good in the, in terms of run control as some of the bigger defensive ends that Ohio State has. So if you can run outside, that's going to go a long way to, just get some stuff off tackle. That's going to get you a lot of the way towards where Ohio State needs to be in the run game. They don't need to run for 9 yards a carry. They don't need to run for 6 yards a carry. They just need to run. If they run for 4 yards a carry, that's probably enough to keep the Michigan defense kind of having to dedicate a little bit more towards stopping the run game. And that's what really opens stuff up in the pass.
Geiger Lee, thank you for joining. We appreciate that. Here's a couple of numbers for you. The last time Ohio State beat Michigan while being outrushed by Michigan 30 years ago.
In terms of yards or yards per carry?
Yardage. We're talking yardage.
Okay.
1994. The last time the team that rushed for more yards in this game and lost was 2000. So whoever rushes for more yards in this game has won every game this century. Now, when you talk about rushing yards, a lot of that is we're running the clock out because we're ahead. So you should have more yards. Tom, we've also talked about yards per carry, and the stat there. If I've got it handy, if you want me to throw it out for you, but it is every year since 2002, the team that averages more yards per carry has won, save for 1 year where both teams averaged 4 yards a carry in 2012. So Ryan Day and Sharon Moore both said run the ball and win. I still think this is a game where Ohio State does not need to outrush Michigan to win because I don't expect either running game to be all that good. And I could see whoever outrushes the other, it could be the result of a 55-yard rush from Khalil Mullings or Travion Henderson. So while it has been of the utmost importance, I think in this one, it doesn't have to be, but also if Ohio State is up by enough, then they're going to run the ball and probably outrush Michigan. And that's kind of, if I recall last year, Ohio State was outrushing Michigan until about the fourth quarter. Michigan finally came on. So that might be a similar thing this year. If Ohio State ends up outrushing Michigan yards per carry and yards, maybe it's takes place in the second half. Although, Tom, I will also say the yards per carry thing is also dangerous at times because people know when you're trying to run the clock out, and you see the yards per carry come down as well.
You do, but I think a lot of it is just if you can hit some consistent stuff early, and maybe hit one big one earlier, that a lot of times is enough to put you in a spot where you've got a solid enough number. I think it's not your numbers coming down if you're just running into the line at the end of the game. But the opposing team, a lot of times the reason they're behind is because they can't run the ball. And in this case, if Michigan can't run the ball, they are not in a good place because they don't really have a passing attack to fall back on to, we've talked about. You're going to see someone other than a quarterback throw a pass, and I'm including Alex Orji in that group. If Alex Orji, Alex Orji is going to throw a pass, or Donovan Edwards is going to throw a pass. If Donovan Jackson throws a pass, it will really be a trick pass.
3 points.
It will really be a trick play. But you're going to see, or Khalil Mullings throw a pass. You're going to see stuff like that. You're going to see they're going to run a flea flicker. They're going to run a flea flicker. It's going to happen. But Michigan's not going to be able to hit. Michigan's not going to be able to probably run the ball consistently enough to string together a 12-play drive. So you're going to need that one play where Khalil Mullings breaks a tackle 6 yards from the line of scrimmage and turns it into a 50-yard gain. You saw that. That's how they beat USC. They hit a big one of those at the end of the game. They hit a big one of those against Indiana, didn't they? They've had a bunch of games where it's like they hit one or two big plays. They did that against Northwestern last week. The running game was averaging 3 yards a carry, and then Donovan Edwards has a 20-yarder and a 18-yarder, and Khalil Mullings has a 40-yarder and a 20-yarder. And it's like sequential plays, but just boom, boom, and then that's it. But then they're down the field and they score points. If you could just not give up the big plays, you're probably going to be able to limit Michigan pretty effectively.
I threw a question up there, and you guys can answer this as well. Who do you think is the final senior announced during the senior day festivities? And I saw a few people suggesting Jack Sawyer, which is probably fitting because he got so many people. He was like the spark, I think, that got a lot of the seniors to return this year. So that might be the one. It would have to doesn't have to be a captain, but it generally is. It's like the emotional leader. It's there's always some sort of meaning to it because it's not alphabetical. So I'm just wondering who you guys think it'll be.
I would have said Sawyer, maybe Simon. I don't know. He has the Block O jersey, so obviously there's some sort of significance there. But I guess I'll take the low hanging fruit and say Sawyer. But that was who I was going to say when I saw you put the question in the queue.
Yeah, I think Sawyer's a good answer. I talked about Sawyer in terms of being the Block O guy this year, and then he wasn't the Block O guy. It was Cody Simon instead. So I think Cody Simon's in that conversation as well. It just, those are going to be probably two of the last guys. Emeka is going to be towards the end. Travion's going to be towards the end. I think Will Howard's going to go probably earlier than you expect, just because he's a transfer and not, hasn't been. But it may be a more interesting question: who gets the loudest ovation?
Yeah,
that might be Will Howard.
That might be Will Howard.
Will Howard has been so impressive lately with his interviews, and he has done everything to endear himself to Buckeye Nation. Just the things he said today, and we have his comments up on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, just about, doing it for the seniors, that he's been here, he's been here for a year, and, he's fully invested in everything, but he wants to be able to, for all these guys who made the choice to come back for another year. I think that Will, and plus two, quarterbacks are just a position that everybody watches. I mean, when you casually watch a football game, you're following where the ball is, and the ball goes through the quarterback on pretty much every offensive play, unless you're running Wildcat or something or whatever. So I think Howard.
I think another thing that people like about him is that he doesn't dance before the game, because apparently a lot of people hated that from Kyle McCord.
Oh, yeah.
So he learned there. You'll also see Seth McLaughlin out there on his scooter. That'll be I think that'll be a new one. Usually we've seen some crutches. I don't know if we've ever seen a scooter on senior day.
Should get him a motorized one so he can speed stuff up.
That'll be one Ryan Day probably walks closer out to him, like what Urban did with John Simon way back when. But it's always an emotional time for everybody. I think what interesting thing Ryan Day said this week about how he's telling these players, when you get to senior day, I don't want you to be emotional. We've been working towards this. This is something you should be excited about. Shouldn't be any tears. There should only be excitement. And leave the tears for the family or whatever. This is what you've come back for. This is what you're here for. This is what you were recruited for. This is what you transferred here for. So don't worry about any tears. Just go out and play. And they seem to be pretty riled up right now. It's only Tuesday. You still have to. You got to play with emotion, Tom. You can't let emotion play with you, as we all know.
I think I heard that somewhere at one point, or 17 points. Finally corrected the graphics, so you can actually read what it says above the teams on the right. That would be first four out. So there you go. That's corrected for next week. So yeah, it is definitely going to be an emotional day. It's going to be a loud day. I someone asking in the comments about whether the fans are going to rush the field if Ohio State wins. I said this on a show that I think we've recorded but not released yet. If you have a strong opinion that people should not rush the field because the opponent's record is insufficiently impressive to you, congratulations on getting appointed to the fun police. Can I see your badge? I bet it's really dull.
What is your badge number? Yeah, rush the field. Do what you got to do. You're only in college for 7 years.
Ready? They'll have the bear mace out. I mean, it'll be a good time. Tom's like, I'm going to go get set up for Sharon Moore's presser. So it'll be Tony and myself out there getting bear mace with, near the goalposts.
I did think earlier this week about the fact that I probably just need to take all of my stuff up at the end of the third quarter into the Michigan post-game press conference room and just have it up there. And then I was out there last year on the field at Michigan, and it took forever to get off the field. I'm sure it's going to be much the same. We've been in the middle of a bunch of field rushes.
Yeah, well, I'd say
both positive and negative for Ohio State over the years. And
I've been good enough to get away from the negative ones. Iowa, Purdue. I was at Iowa. I was already halfway up the tunnel. I was like, I don't need to get run over.
2016 Michigan. I was at the exact opposite place I needed to be to get to interviews, and then 2017 Penn State. Both of those games. I know, Kevin, you're talking about bear mace. That was not bear mace that I was smelling from the crowd down on the field. It was a skunky type of something or other that was permeating throughout the crowd there on the field.
Stoner mace. Yeah.
Snoop mace.
Yeah. But no, the secret is where Carmen, Ohio is going to be. Get kind of over near there. And somebody's going to have to run out to the 50. with Ryan and get those shots and everything else. And that person is, we're
you
gonna
know who that
we
is.
will sing songs in your honor, but you're going to die out there. But if you can get over by where Carmen, Ohio is, you miss a lot of it. But what you get is you get crushed by everybody coming out of South stands.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to keep your head on a swivel.
My job will be to get to the people coming from the South stands who are going to get into the faces of Michigan players and yell at them and berate them, so that I can film what happens to those people who do that.
Don't do that. Like, go have fun. Don't make it a negative thing. Like, go have fun. Everyone who says you shouldn't do that is stupid and wrong. Like, go have fun. It's cool. It's fine.
But
don't make it a negative thing. That's not.
See
you're allowed to be happy and not have other people be miserable at the same time. Like, they're already sad. You don't need to do anything more. It's fine. Like, you can just go have fun with your friends. That's a thing you're allowed to do.
Did you guys watch the Big 12 game, the Arizona State BYU game, and when the crowd comes storming the field, there's an Arizona State student fan that has his phone out and he's shooting and he's pointing and laughing at a BYU player on laying on the ground, and it's immediate. And I'm thinking, like, this guy, you arrest that person, put him in jail, because that's just cruel. Now, if it happens this weekend, who's to say? But just be aware that if you do something in an aggressive manner, something in an aggressive manner might be done to you. That's all I'll say. Not for me or Tom.
And I mean, on that note, remember, if you do it to a Michigan student athlete, they are probably in better shape than you. And if it is a member of the law enforcement community, they have the right to arrest you or baton you or tase you or any of those fantastic options.
Got to watch out for the tasing. All right, we got some more starred ones there.
Geiger League, we've been stuck at 99 thumbs for too long. Come on, people. Yeah, sometimes it updates, sometimes it doesn't. So I will see what the final number is. But if you'd like the show, hit the thumbs up. Hit the bell so you don't miss anything. Subscribe to our channel here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. The more of you that subscribe, it helps us with our distribution. And of course, lets us know that you like us and we do more shows. Yeah.
Let's hit the clever and witty one real quick.
There we go.
This is just another one that I want to just clarify for people. And the question is, in what world does Boise State deserve a first round bye? They don't even play in a Power 4 conference. What the heck? So the way the first round byes work is, if you are one of the top 4 ranked conference champions, it does not have to be Power 4 conference champions. If you are one of the top 4 ranked conference champions, you get one of those first round byes. That's it. Period. Full stop. End of story. Theoretically, you could have, the Conference USA champion, the Sun Belt champion, the AAC champion, and the Mountain West champion get the 4 first-round byes. Now, that's never going to happen, but you could have, in this case, the Mountain West champion, Boise State, because they are ranked number 11, and the Big 12 champion, Arizona State, is ranked 16th. Boise State gets the first-round bye. Arizona State is the 5th ranked conference champion, so they get one of the slots in that 5 to 12 range, and because they fall below everyone else there, they are the 12 seed. What you could have that we talked about earlier that could be really wild is if Tulane jumps Arizona State somehow and the AAC champion finishes with a higher ranking than the Big 12 champion, you could have the Mountain West champion and the AAC champion in and no one from the Big 12. That is a possibility this year. It's shockingly close to happening. I don't think it's going to end up really happening because there is a little bit of a subjective thing here with the committee. And is the committee really going to put 2 non-power teams in? Yeah, we'll see. Probably not. But we are shockingly close to that happening, considering where we are on the calendar right now.
Let me go here. Geiger Lee, will OSU non-quarterbacks throw more touchdowns than Michigan quarterbacks?
That's an interesting question. We saw Emeka Egbuka a couple of games ago attempt a pass. So we know that is a play that Chip Kelly can go to. I don't think that Ohio State needs to get crazy. We know Michigan will attempt something. If Ohio State were to do that in this game, it would be kind of just a little, FU basically. I think to Michigan, like, look at what we're doing to you, and this is something that you need to do. This is just something we're just doing it because we can. So I don't know that we will see that, but we've seen Duron Carter throw a touchdown pass in the game before. We've seen Evan Spencer throw a touchdown pass in the game before. So Ohio State receivers have done it, and we know that they believe that Emeka Egbuka can do it. I think with this Michigan secondary, I think you're okay just having Will Howard throw the ball, frankly. That's where I would go.
Yeah, I don't think they need to get too cute. I think they can just kind of be efficient and stay on schedule and do all the boring stuff that we always say. It's just me. Tim says, bold prediction, there will be people leaving in the third quarter because it's like a 20-point deficit. When you say deficit, do you mean Ohio State trailing by 20 points? Because
no,
I mean,
No,
so
no.
you're, I mean, yeah,
It's just me. Tim is no, he's a regular. I
know who he is. I'm just trying to figure out, like, picking a team that's favored by 20 to have a 20-point lead in the third quarter isn't really bold. And
he's saying since the game is over, people are going to leave because it's going to be cold, and it's like, we won.
People are going to want to sit there and see the end of the game and the jubilation and everything like that. If the game is going in that direction, I understand the cold and everything else, and beers outside are not $13 and everything else, but I don't expect to see a lot of people vacating their seats if Ohio State is winning this game, just because it has been a multi-year drought and people are ready to celebrate.
Yeah, partying makes you warmer. Yelling and jumping up and down and moving about makes you warmer. So stay warm.
P-Flaws, going to be huge in this championship run. IU is all over JJ with doubles. Yep.
Yeah, I would like to have seen them go with Carnell Tate even more. I mean, it was just basically one drive, the 4 for 68, I think. But it shows you the effectiveness that he has, and he is a mismatch as well. Honestly, I don't think there's no good matchups for Michigan secondary in this game at all. So take the one that is single covered and just go at him.
And the last one here from Jason Manley, Dan Patrick asking Herb, quote, do you ever feel sorry when you faced Michigan and you were running up the score, roughing them up a little bit? Pregnant pause, Urban, and I quote, no. And that's the way it should be. I mean, that is the way it should be. Urban obviously has made everybody's life more difficult with his 7-0 record against the team up north. And Ryan Day would like to get this and maybe start a 7-game win streak against Michigan. But who knows how long anybody's going to last as a head coach. It is such a grinder of a job.
Who knows how long the sport is going to last? I heard it's dying because players are getting paid now. So it's unfortunate, frankly. But Tom, did you?
I heard something about that.
Attendance is going to ruin the sport.
So, turns out things are all going okay. The playoffs have not killed it either.
Something, laundry money, something.
So that will do it. Thank you all for tuning in and sticking around for so long. We do appreciate it. Like I said, we're going to have plenty more stuff, a whole bunch more Michigan talk, as you guys would expect. So hit the thumbs up before you go. Hit the bell to be notified before you go. That way you will be notified when we drop something. And, of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Thank you all for tuning in tonight, and we will talk to you guys later.